The detective clicked the handcuffs around my wrists at 10:47 a.m. on a Tuesday morning. Detective Marcus Rawlings read from a card. Mid-40s, skeptical eyes. My daughter Monica, the one who'd vanished from our lives 12 years ago, pointed at me with manicured nails. Tears streamed down her cheeks, but her mascara stayed perfect. "He kidnapped my children," she said, 12 years ago. My grandchildren stood in the doorway, Tyler's arm wrapped around Jasmine. Darnell looked between the woman claiming to be his mother and me. "Detective," I said, "there's something in my basement you need to see. If you're still with me, please subscribe and drop your location in the comments, or it means everything." My name is Vernon Calloway. I'm 58 years old, and I spent 30 years as a postal carrier in Atlanta before they put handcuffs on me in my own living room. The Postal Service hired me in 1989, 3 months after I married Eleanor. Starting salary was $23,400. I remember because I calculated exactly how many routes I'd need to walk before we could afford a down payment on a house. The answer was 1,247 days, give or take. I made it in 1089. Those first years, I carried mail through neighborhoods where the humidity hit 90% by 8 a.m. My uniform stuck to my back. Dogs learned my schedule. Old women on porches offered me sweet tea. I couldn't accept because it would slow me down, and slowing down meant finishing late, and finishing late meant overtime I hadn't earned. The Postal Service tracked everything. Delivery times, complaint rates, sick days. Every piece of mail in my bag represented a potential federal investigation. Lost birthday cards could mean congressional inquiries. Misdirected tax documents could mean lawsuits. I learned early that documentation was sacred. Certified mail required signatures. Chain of custody meant knowing exactly whose hands touched what and when. Proper filing meant I could locate any record within 90 seconds. These weren't suggestions. These were requirements backed by federal law and the kind of supervisors who'd been doing the job since before I was born. By 2002, I supervised a team of 12 carriers. Eleanor stopped taking double shifts at the hospital. We'd bought our Decatur ranch house in 1992 for $87,000, a modest brick place with 1,400 square feet and ceiling fans in every room. Nothing fancy, everything ours. Eleanor and I raised Monica in that house. Watched her graduate high school, then drop out of community college. Watched her marry young to a man named Richard Calloway Jr., no relation to us, who worked construction and died in a scaffolding accident when their son Tyler was 2. Watched her collect the life insurance, burn through it in 18 months, and start dating men who treated her children like furniture. I said nothing. Eleanor said plenty. Monica stopped visiting. The night of August 14th, 2014 changed everything. I was watching the 11 o'clock news when headlights swept across the living room curtains. The motion sensor on our porch clicked, flooding the front steps with light. I checked my watch. 11:47 p.m. Monica's silver Honda Civic sat in the driveway, engine running. The driver's door opened. My daughter stepped out in jean shorts and a wrinkled tank top, her hair unwashed. She slammed the car door, marched to the back seat, started pulling children out like she was unloading groceries. 3 of them. Tyler, age 5, rubbing his eyes and stumbling on the steps. Jasmine, age 2, wailing in that high-pitched way toddlers do when they've been woken from deep sleep. and baby Darnell, 6 months old, still strapped in a car seat that Monica dropped on my porch next to 2 garbage bags full of clothes. I opened the front door. "Juas, hate them," Monica said. She was already backing toward the car. "What's going on?" I asked. She stopped, turned. Her face held no tears, no conflict, no hesitation, just the flat expression of someone dropping off a package they no longer wanted. "I never wanted them," she said. "Whatever papers you need me to sign, I'll sign. Just don't contact me again." My own daughter. 3 children crying on my porch. Garbage bags instead of suitcases. "Monica," I said, "we can talk about this." She shook her head. "There's nothing to talk about. I'm done." She got in the car. The engine revved. I watched the taillights shrink down Maple Street until they disappeared around the corner. Behind me, Tyler asked where Mama was going. Jasmine kept crying. Darnell's car seat sat on the concrete, and tucked into the straps was a folded piece of paper. I pulled it out. A Waffle House receipt, scattered and smothered hash browns, $7.43. On the back, in blue ballpoint, "Take them. I never wanted them. Whatever papers you need me to sign, I'll sign. Just don't contact me again." I stood there holding that receipt while my grandchildren cried and Gloria Henderson's kitchen light flickered on next door. Gloria, my 71-year-old neighbor, appeared on her porch in a bathrobe, holding something I couldn't identify in the darkness. Later, I'd learn it was a Polaroid camera. She'd taken 3 pictures before Monica's taillights vanished. The Civic in my driveway with headlights blazing, the children huddled on my steps, and those taillights disappearing into the night. She asked if I needed help. I told her yes. Eleanor came outside in her nightgown, already reaching for Darnell's car seat, already murmuring the soft sounds that calm babies. Within 15 minutes, all 3 children were inside. Jasmine in Eleanor's lap, Tyler wrapped in a blanket on the couch, Darnell's bottle warming on the stove. I sat at the kitchen table with the Waffle House receipt in front of me. 30 years of postal training took over. The next morning, I drove to Kinko's and made 6 copies of the receipt. The copier hummed, 6 copies, warm from the machine. I bought a pack of acid-free archival envelopes from an office supply store 2 blocks away. I placed the original in one envelope, sealed it, dated the seal with permanent marker. That afternoon, I called Monica. She answered on the 4th ring. "I need you to sign a formal custody surrender," I said. "Fine," she said. "When?" "Tomorrow. I'll have a notary present." "Whatever." She hung up. At 2 p.m. on August 16, 2014, Monica sat at my kitchen table across from Ernestine Polk. Ernestine had been a notary public for 40 years, and she'd handled enough documents to recognize when something mattered. Gloria Henderson stood beside the refrigerator as a witness. Monica signed the custody surrender letter without reading it. Her signature was steady. Her hands didn't shake. Ernestine asked if she understood she was voluntarily relinquishing parental rights to all 3 children. Monica said yes. Ernestine made notes in her notary log about the signatory's demeanor, calm, willing, no evidence of coercion. I photographed everything: the signed letter, the Waffle House receipt, the children asleep in the guest bedroom we'd converted into a nursery. I drove to CVS and had the photos developed with 1-hour service, keeping the receipt with its timestamp. When I got home, I placed every document in a SentrySafe 1170 fireproof lockbox purchased from Home Depot that morning. The lockbox went on a steel shelf in my basement office, behind boxes of old Postal Service manuals I'd never thrown away. I checked the seal monthly. I prayed I would never need what was inside. 12 years passed. Tyler's first day of kindergarten. Jasmine's first words beyond mama and dada. Darnell learning to walk by, pulling himself up on the coffee table where my jazz records sat in their sleeves. I retired from the Postal Service in 2019 with a pension of $3,200 monthly. Eleanor and I thought we'd spend our golden years spoiling grandchildren who called us grandpa and grandma instead of the temporary arrangements we'd expected. Then Eleanor got sick. Pancreatic cancer moves fast. Diagnosis in March 2022, gone by July. The children watched me bury the only grandmother they'd known, while I calculated how to raise 3 kids alone on a fixed income. I managed. That's what you do. Tyler turned 13 the year Eleanor died. He shot up 6 inches that summer, gangly and awkward, until basketball gave him a purpose. By 15, he'd made varsity. By 17, college scouts were calling the house asking about his transcript and test scores. He never argued with refs, never trash-talked opponents, just played. Jasmine started keeping journals when she was 8. Composition notebooks with marble covers, one for each year, filled with her looping handwriting. She documented everything: birthday parties, Christmas mornings, school award ceremonies, the time Darnell got chickenpox and I stayed up 3 nights running cool baths and counting the hours between Tylenol doses. I flipped through those journals sometimes when she was at school. Not one entry mentioned her mother. Darnell drew constantly. Crayons, markers, colored pencils, whatever I put in front of him. He created illustrated family histories on construction paper, elaborate genealogies featuring me, Tyler, Jasmine, Gloria Henderson from next door, even our mailman Carlos. The drawings showed holidays and summer vacations and Sunday pancake breakfasts. They never included a mother figure. Not once. My jazz collection grew to 400 records over those 12 years. Every Sunday morning, I taught Tyler about Miles Davis and Coltrane while making pancakes from scratch. The 1959 Columbia 6i pressing of Kind of Blue became his favorite. He learned to identify different labels by their design, to hear the difference between a first pressing and a reissue. I never adopted the children formally. The courts would have granted it. Monica had signed everything, but somewhere in my mind, I held onto the possibility that she might come back, that she might want to reconcile with her children, to explain herself, to be part of their lives in whatever limited way she could manage. I believed people could change. I believed family meant something that couldn't be severed by a signature on a Waffle House receipt. I held on to that hope. Whether it was wisdom or weakness, I couldn't say then. The fireproof lockbox sat in my basement for 12 years. I checked the seal the first of every month, a habit from my postal days. The documents inside never moved, never aged, never needed anything from me except protection. I told myself the evidence was insurance, just in case. The same way Eleanor kept cash in a coffee can above the refrigerator, the same way Gloria Henderson stored canned goods in her basement, the same way anyone who'd lived through uncertainty prepared for the day the world might shift beneath their feet. The handcuffs clicked around my wrists on a Tuesday morning in October. My daughter pointed at me and called me a kidnapper. My grandchildren watched from the doorway, Tyler's arm around Jasmine, Darnell's eyes moving between the stranger claiming to be his mother and the grandfather who'd raised him. I told Detective Rawlings there was something in my basement he needed to see. I wasn't talking about outdated regulations. What I'm about to describe, I learned later during discovery. depositions, and the long unraveling of everything Monica and Bradley had built. By then, I'd pieced together the timeline, the financial records, the chain of decisions that led my daughter back to my doorstep with handcuffs and accusations. While I raised her children in Decatur, Monica was becoming someone else entirely. She met Bradley Reese at a charity auction in 2016, 2 years after she'd left those garbage bags on my porch. He was 40 then, tall, with the practiced ease of a man who'd spent decades selling people things they couldn't afford. Monica was 28 and still working reception at a real estate office in Midtown, answering phones and watching wealthy clients walk past her desk like she didn't exist. Bradley noticed her. Bradley always noticed women who looked hungry for more. They married in 2017 at a venue in Buckhead that cost $47,000 for the weekend. I learned this from the bankruptcy filings. Monica didn't invite me. She didn't mention the 3 grandchildren I was putting through school pictures and flu shots and parent-teacher conferences. As far as Bradley knew, Monica had no family worth discussing. The Tudor-style house came next, 4,200 square feet on a lot with a circular driveway and landscaping maintained by a crew that arrived every Tuesday at 7 a.m. They paid $1.2 million for the Tudor. The down payment came from Bradley's development company, a company already carrying more debt than equity. The monthly mortgage sat at $6,800, not counting property taxes, insurance, or the decorator Monica hired to make the interior look like old money. The decorator charged $89,000 for furniture and art and window treatments. Monica paid with a credit card Bradley didn't know about, a card she'd opened in both their names using his Social Security number. I found this in the discovery documents too. My daughter had learned to hide money almost as well as I'd learned to document it. Monica collected Hermes scarves. She attended galas. She dropped names at country club luncheons, referencing people she'd met once as though they were close friends. She affected a slight accent, something mid-Atlantic, the kind news anchors used in the 1960s that erased the flat Atlanta vowels she'd grown up with. She told new acquaintances that her parents had passed away years ago. Eleanor and I were dead to her. So were Tyler and Jasmine and Darnell. Bradley's real estate company had the appearance of success. The website featured renders of gleaming towers. The office had marble floors. The receptionist wore designer labels. Reese Development, LLC had 3 projects under construction in 2019, all of them mixed-use buildings in neighborhoods developers called transitional and residents called home. The construction loans totaled $4.7 million. Interest payments ran $31,000 monthly. Bradley had personally guaranteed $2.1 million of that debt, pledging the Buckhead house and his retirement accounts as collateral. The project stalled in 2020. Supply chain problems, permit delays, cost overruns that ate through contingency budgets. 2 properties sat finished but empty, the market softening just as Bradley needed buyers most. He started moving money between accounts, using deposits from new investors to cover shortfalls on old projects. The legal term for this is commingling. The criminal term is fraud. By early 2024, Bradley was waking at 3 a.m. to check his email, hoping for a loan extension or a buyer or anything that might delay the collapse another month. His creditors were circling. The landscaping crew stopped coming because the checks bounced. Bradley touched his Rolex constantly now, a nervous habit Monica noticed but misunderstood. She thought he was showing off. He was calculating how much it might bring at pawn. The discovery happened in March. Bradley was running a title search on a property in Kirkwood, a small lot Tyler's late father, Richard Jr., had owned before the scaffolding accident that killed him. The property had been tied up in probate for years, forgotten by everyone except the county tax assessor. Bradley found it while hunting for any asset that might be liquidated. The title search turned up something unexpected, but trust. The Calloway Trust Fund had been established in 2009 by Richard Calloway Sr., Tyler's paternal grandfather. Richard Sr. made his money in commercial plumbing supply, building a small empire of warehouses and contracts before retiring to a golf community in Florida. When his son died, Richard Sr. created an irrevocable trust for his only grandchild. The principal was $340,000. The trust would mature on Tyler's 17th birthday with full disbursement at 21. Tyler had turned 17 3 months earlier. Bradley read the trust documents twice, then a third time. The money sat in an account at First National Bank of Atlanta, managed by a trust officer who sent quarterly statements to Vernon Calloway, listed as Tyler's guardian. Bradley drove home that evening with a folder of documents on his passenger seat. Monica found him in his study, surrounded by Civil War memorabilia and framed photos of himself with local politicians. He poured bourbon, but hadn't touched it. The glass sat sweating on his desk while he stared at a single page. "What is this?" Monica asked. Bradley handed her the trust summary. She read it standing up, her manicured nails leaving small indentations in the paper. "Richard's father left money for Tyler," she said. Her voice was flat. "Why didn't I know about this?" "You were excluded." Bradley pointed to a paragraph near the bottom. In 2015, 6 months before his death, Richard Calloway Sr. had amended the trust documents. The revision added specific language barring Monica Calloway from any access, control, or conservatorship over the trust assets. The stated reason was abandonment of the minor beneficiary. Monica set the paper down. "That old bastard," she said. Bradley watched her face. The mask she wore in public had slipped. Something cold moved behind her eyes, something that calculated rather than felt. $340,000, he said. Monica picked up the document again. "That money should be mine," she said. "I gave birth to that kid. I'm his mother. Legally, you're nothing." Bradley's voice carried no judgment, only the practical assessment of a man evaluating assets. He'd married Monica partly because he believed her family had hidden wealth. He'd been disappointed to discover her father was a retired postal worker with a modest pension. But this changed the equation. "There's a way," he said. Monica looked at him. The head tilt, the slight lean forward. Bradley still mistook it for affection. "Emergency custody," he continued. "We file a motion claiming the children are in danger. Tyler's 17, so he's the priority. Once we have custody, we petition to become conservators of the trust. The court appoints us to manage his assets until he turns 21. And then what? Then we access the funds to cover necessary expenses, education, medical care, whatever we can justify. Living expenses that happen to match our mortgage." Monica sat down across from him. The bourbon remained untouched between them. "My father will fight it," she said. "Your father is a retired mailman living on a government pension. What's he going to do? Show receipts for diapers?" Bradley laughed at his own joke. Monica didn't. She was thinking about the notarized letter she'd signed 12 years ago, the one her father had insisted on, the one that spelled out in plain language that she was surrendering custody voluntarily. "He keeps records," she said. Bradley waved his hand. "Records of what?" Being a good grandfather? That doesn't prove anything. We file first. We control the narrative. By the time he figures out what's happening, the kids are ours, and the trust is open. Monica nodded slowly. The math made sense to her. 3 children she'd discarded, now worth $340,000. The money wasn't Tyler's, not really. She'd carried him for 9 months, endured labor, watched her body change. She'd produced the heir. The inheritance was hers by right of creation. The lawyer came from Bradley's network of business contacts. Nathan Patterson specialized in commercial litigation, contract disputes, and corporate mergers. He charged $600 an hour and wore Italian suits. He'd never set foot in family court. His inexperience didn't concern Bradley. Family court was for custody battles between middle-class parents fighting over weekends and holidays. This was a business transaction wrapped in legal procedure. Patterson would file the papers, make the arguments, and Bradley would pay the bills. Simple. Patterson drafted the affidavit in 3 days. The document alleged that Vernon Calloway had unlawfully removed 3 minor children from their mother's care in 2014, subsequently alienating them from their biological parent through systematic isolation and manipulation. It claimed the children were in immediate danger of psychological harm if they remained in Vernon's custody. It requested emergency removal pending a full hearing. Monica practiced her testimony in front of their bedroom mirror. She watched her own reflection cry, adjusting the angle of her head, the tremor in her voice, the precise moment when tears should overflow her carefully applied mascara. "Do I look believable?" she asked Bradley. "You look like a mother who's suffered for 12 years, he said. She ran through the performance again, the story of postpartum depression that no one understood, the controlling father who'd taken advantage of her vulnerability, the years of trying to reconnect, blocked at every turn, the anguish of seeing her children grow up without her. None of it was true. But truth wasn't the point. Patterson filed the ex parte motion on a Friday afternoon, timed so Vernon would receive service at the start of the week with minimal time to respond. The papers were served by a process server at 7 a.m. on a Tuesday, giving Vernon exactly 72 hours to find an attorney, file a response, and prepare for an emergency hearing. Monica dressed carefully for the courthouse. The navy dress, the low heels, the minimal jewelry. She'd studied what grieving mothers wore on television. By the time she entered the courthouse, she was one. Bradley sat behind her during the proceedings, touching his Rolex whenever anxiety spiked through his chest. He'd borrowed against everything: his retirement, the house, his partner's share of the company. If this failed, if the trust remained untouchable, he'd be filing Chapter 7 by summer. Neither of them researched Vernon beyond dismissing him. They knew he'd worked for the Postal Service. They knew he lived in the same small house in Decatur, where Monica had grown up poor and unhappy and determined to escape. They didn't know about the fireproof lockbox in his basement. They didn't know about Gloria Henderson's Polaroid photographs. They didn't know about Ernestine Polk's notary logs, preserved for 40 years as professional habit. They didn't know about Jasmine's journals documenting 12 years without a mother's mention. They saw a retired mailman with a pension and a modest house. They didn't see the 30 years of federal training in chain of custody. They saw receipts. They didn't see an archivist. The trap was set. Vernon would receive the papers Monday morning. By Friday, Monica expected to be walking out of the courthouse with custody documents in her hand and access to $340,000 within reach. She had no idea her father had been cataloging evidence like certified mail. 12 years of documentation sealed and dated, waiting to be delivered. The process server knocked at 7:03 a.m. I opened the door in my bathrobe, coffee still brewing in the kitchen, and watched a young woman in a gray polo shirt thrust a manila envelope into my hands. "Vernon Calloway? That's me. You've been served." She was already walking back to her car before I could respond. The engine started. The taillights disappeared down Maple Street. I stood in my doorway holding papers that accused me of kidnapping my own grandchildren. I set my coffee aside and counted pages. 14, each one a lie stacked on the previous. Monica's name appeared on the second page as petitioner. Bradley Reese was listed as her spouse and co-petitioner. Their attorney, Nathan Patterson, had an address in Buckhead and a letterhead that featured more gold foil than substance. The allegations were specific in their lies. I had allegedly removed 3 minor children from their mother's care on August 14, 2014, using my position as a trusted family member to exploit Monica's postpartum depression. I had allegedly changed phone numbers multiple times to prevent contact. I had allegedly moved residences to avoid detection. I had allegedly engaged in systematic psychological manipulation to alienate the children from their biological mother. I'd lived in the same house since 1992, same phone number for 18 years. The hearing was scheduled for Friday. 72 hours to find a lawyer, file a response, and prepare a defense against 12 years of documented truth being called kidnapping. Tyler appeared in the kitchen doorway at 7:45. He was already dressed for school, backpack over one shoulder, eyes moving from my face to the papers spread across the table. Jasmine and Darnell were still asleep down the hall. "What's happening, Grandpa?" "Your mother filed for custody. There's a hearing Friday." He set his backpack down. His jaw tightened in a way that reminded me of his father, the man who died before. Tyler learned to talk. "She can't just take us. She's trying." The county courthouse provided a list of attorneys who accepted court appointments. I called 7 before noon. 3 didn't handle family law. 2 couldn't take new cases on such short notice. 1 never returned my call. The 7th number connected me to Denise Okonkwo. "Mr. Calloway," she said after I'd explained the situation, "I've handled over 200 cases in Judge Womack's courtroom. Tell me about the night your daughter left those children on your porch." I told her the garbage bags, the Waffle House receipt, the notarized letter signed 48 hours later, the fireproof lockbox in my basement containing 12 years of documentation. Denise was quiet for a long moment. "I can be at your house by 6. The Fulton County Courthouse smelled like floor wax and anxiety. Judge Patricia Womack's courtroom was on the 3rd floor, a cramped space with fluorescent lights that buzzed at a frequency just below consciousness. The wooden benches had been polished so many times the grain had worn smooth. An American flag hung limp in the corner. The Georgia state seal stared down from behind the judge's elevated bench. I arrived at 8003 for a 9 a.m. hearing. Denise sat beside me, her briefcase open on the table, legal pads arranged in precise order. She was 44, Howard Law, class of 2006, with the kind of focused stillness that suggested she'd seen every trick family court could produce. Monica entered at 8:47. She wore a navy dress with a modest neckline and low heels. Her jewelry was understated. Her hair fell in soft waves that probably cost $300 at a Buckhead salon. Every detail of her appearance had been calibrated for maximum sympathy. Bradley followed 3 steps behind. His suit fit well, but his posture gave him away. His hand crept toward his Rolex every few seconds, fingers brushing the band before dropping back to his side. A nervous tell, the kind of thing you notice when you've spent 35 years reading people across counters and doorsteps. I spotted it immediately. Their attorney, Patterson, had the tan of a man who golfed more than he litigated. He carried a leather briefcase that cost more than Denise's monthly car payment. He nodded at the gallery, at the court staff, at the reporter from the Atlanta Journal-Constitution who'd taken a seat in the third row. My grandchildren were somewhere in the building. Tyler had insisted on coming, and I'd agreed only because Denise said the judge might want to speak with him. Jasmine and Darnell waited in a supervised room down the hall, watched by a court officer who'd given them coloring books and told them not to worry. All rise. Judge Womack entered through a door behind the bench. She was 62, with natural gray hair worn in short twists and reading glasses she removed and set aside. Her eyes moved from Monica to me, pausing on Bradley's hand as it crept toward his watch. Be seated. Patterson stood first. He spoke for 23 minutes without pause, describing a mother struggling with postpartum depression who had temporarily placed her children with their grandfather while seeking treatment, never intending permanent surrender. Vernon Calloway had exploited her vulnerability, cutting off contact, moving to new addresses, poisoning the children against their loving mother. Monica wept at the appropriate moments. Her tears flowed on cue. The mascara ran at precisely the right moment. Her voice trembled when Patterson asked her to confirm certain details. He changed his phone number 3 times, she said, dabbing her eyes with a tissue. Every time I tried to call, the number was disconnected. I'd had the same phone number for 18 years. The carrier records would prove it. But Patterson hadn't subpoenaed phone records because he assumed I couldn't afford to fight back. I watched Monica, counted her tears, noted the tissue clutched in her left hand like a prop. Eleanor would have seen through it in seconds. I saw through it now. The children were hidden from me, Monica continued. I didn't know where they lived. I didn't know what schools they attended. I tried everything. She'd known exactly where we lived. The same house in Decatur, where she'd grown up. The same address on the same street with the same neighbors who'd watched her drive away 12 years ago. Detective Marcus Rawlings took the stand at 10,005. He was 45, with the careful demeanor of a man who'd testified hundreds of times and knew the value of precise language. Detective, Patterson began, in your professional assessment, does the petitioner's account align with established patterns of parental kidnapping? Rawlings considered the question. The pattern is consistent, he said. The alleged isolation from family. The alleged phone number changes. The alleged relocation. These are tactics we see in cases of custodial interference. Consistent with parental kidnapping. Also consistent with grandparents raising children their parents abandoned. The detective didn't mention that possibility. And the respondent's cooperation during your investigation? Mr. Calloway was cooperative, Rawlings admitted. He provided access to his home and answered questions without hesitation. But cooperation doesn't preclude guilt, does it? No, it doesn't. A woman in the second row shook her head. The reporter scribbled faster. No one looked at Monica's tissue. Denise rose when Patterson finished. Your Honor, we request additional time to present documentary evidence that directly contradicts the petitioner's sworn statements. Patterson objected before she finished speaking. Your Honor, the children's safety demands immediate action. Every day of delay is another day. They remain in potentially harmful circumstances. Judge Womack's expression remained unreadable. Her eyes moved between Monica's flowing tears and my stillness. Something flickered across her face. Recognition, perhaps. The look of a woman who'd spent 30 years watching people perform in her courtroom. "I'm granting a temporary supervised visitation order," she said finally. "The children will remain in Mr. Calloway's home, pending a full evidentiary hearing." "Your Honor," Patterson started. Womack cut him off with a raised hand. "The hearing is scheduled for next Friday. Both parties will have the opportunity to present evidence and testimony. Until then, visitation will occur at the Department of Family Services under direct supervision." She looked at me. "Mr. Calloway, do you understand these terms?" "Yes, Your Honor. Court is adjourned." The gavel fell. The courtroom stirred. Patterson leaned toward Monica, whispering something that made her jaw tighten. I had 7 days to prove 12 years of truth. 7 days to open the lockbox and spread its contents across a courtroom table. 7 days to show Judge Womack the Waffle House receipt, the notarized letter, the photographs developed at CVS with time-stamped receipts still attached. 12 years of birthdays, report cards, sick nights. Tyler's first basketball trophy, Jasmine's journals, Darnell's drawings, all of it hanging on 7 days. Denise gathered her papers. "We'll start with the lockbox tonight. I want copies of everything before we leave your house." I nodded. The courthouse hallway stretched ahead of me, crowded with attorneys and clients and families torn apart by custody battles. I walked toward the exit, Denise beside me, my steps measured and unhurried. Monica caught my eye as I passed. She smiled. The same cold smile from the night she'd driven away, leaving 3 crying children on my porch. The smile of someone who believed she'd already won. I held her gaze for 3 seconds. Then I turned and walked out of the courthouse into the October sunlight toward the Waffle House receipt. The notarized letter, 12 years of proof. The basement stairs creaked under my weight. Behind me, the kitchen clock read 9:47 p.m. Denise had said she'd arrive by 10. That gave me 13 minutes to face what I'd been protecting for 12 years. I pulled the chain on the single bulb. Yellow light cut between steel shelving units and cardboard boxes stacked 3 high. Old Postal Service manuals. Carrier route maps from districts that no longer existed. Equipment logs I'd maintained for supervisors who'd retired before Eleanor died. The SentrySafe 1170 sat on its dedicated shelf, exactly where I'd placed it on August 16, 2014. I checked the seal monthly. Habit, the kind of routine that becomes invisible until you need it. I spun the combination without hesitation. Right to 47, left to 12, right to 33. The numbers of my postal badge, my wedding anniversary, and the day Tyler was born. The lock clicked. I opened the lid. The smell of preserved paper rose from the interior. Acid-free envelopes, protective plastic sleeves. File folders labeled in my handwriting with dates and contents. The notarized custody surrender letter sat on top. I'd placed it there first because I knew it would matter most. The plastic sleeve had kept the paper pristine. Monica's signature crossed the bottom line, steady and unhesitant. Ernestine Polk's embossed notary seal caught the light. Beneath the letter, the Waffle House receipt in its acid-free envelope. $7.43 for scattered and smothered hash browns and coffee. On the back, blue ballpoint. Take them. I never wanted them. Whatever papers you need me to sign, I'll sign. Just don't contact me again. I held the receipt for a moment. $7.43. That was what my daughter thought her children were worth. The cost of a late-night meal at a roadside diner. The CVS photographs came next. 24 images on glossy paper, developed with 1-hour service on August 17, 2014. The original envelope still held them, my name printed on the front, the receipt stapled to the corner showing date, time, and store location. The pictures documented the children's arrival. Tyler's red-rimmed eyes. Jasmine clutching a stuffed rabbit I didn't recognize. Darnell asleep in his car seat, too young to understand what had just happened to his life. Below the photographs, 12 years of files. School enrollment forms listing Vernon Calloway as guardian. Medical records showing Vernon Calloway as emergency contact and decision-maker. Report card signed Vernon Calloway. Immunization logs, dental appointments, prescription receipts for antibiotics and fever reducers, and the albuterol inhaler Jasmine needed for her asthma. Every document dated. Every signature mine. Every record proving continuous care from the night Monica drove away to the morning Detective Rawlings put handcuffs on my wrists. The doorbell rang at 9:58, 2 minutes early. I carried the lockbox upstairs and set it on the kitchen table. Denise stood on the porch in a gray blazer, her briefcase in one hand and a legal pad in the other. Her eyes moved to the steel box. "That's everything? 12 years?" I said. She came in without another word. For the next 40 minutes, I removed documents one at a time while Denise arranged them across the table. She worked with the same methodical precision I recognized from my postal days. Categories first. Chronological order within each category. Cross-references noted on her legal pad. When the table was covered, she stepped back and stood motionless. 20 seconds. 30. 45. "Mr. Calloway," she said, "in 20 years of family law, I have never seen documentation this thorough. I just kept records." No. She picked up the custody surrender letter, examined the notary seal, set it down exactly where it had been. "You built an archive." Date, stamped photographs with the developing receipt still attached. Acid-free preservation. A fireproof container. This isn't record-keeping. This is chain of custody. The Postal Service trained me. She looked at me differently after that. Not as a client who needed defending. As an ally who'd already done half her work. Gloria Henderson stood on the porch at 10,035, holding a shoebox under her arm. At 83, she moved slower than the night she'd photographed Monica's taillights, but her eyes were just as sharp. "Told you I'd keep my own insurance," she said. She set the shoebox on the kitchen counter. Inside, wrapped in tissue paper, 3 Polaroid photographs I hadn't seen in 12 years. The first showed Monica's silver Honda Civic in my driveway. Headlights on, engine running. The timestamp on the white border read 11:48 p.m., 1 minute after Monica had knocked on my door. The second captured the children on my porch steps. Tyler stood at the center, his arms around Jasmine and Darnell's car seat. Behind them, garbage bags slumped against the railing. 3 faces caught in the motion sensor light. 3 children waiting for someone to explain what was happening. The third Polaroid showed taillights. Small red dots disappearing down Maple Street. The last image of Monica before she vanished for 12 years. Gloria arranged the photographs beside her shoebox. "Made copies at Kinko's in 2015, she said. Color copies on that glossy paper they used to stock. Told the clerk it was for a legal matter. He didn't ask questions. Stored them in my safe deposit box at Wells Fargo ever since." Denise picked up the first Polaroid. She set down the letter without speaking, picked up the receipt, set it down. checked the notary seal again. Mrs. Henderson, why did you take these? Because I knew, Gloria said. Watched Monica grow up in that house across from mine. Saw the way she looked at those babies. Like they were mistakes she couldn't return. When she drove away that night, I knew she wasn't coming back. I called Ernestine Polk at 11. Her voice was thick with sleep until I explained why I was calling. My notary log, she said. Still got every one of them. 52 years worth in my attic. I need the entry from August 2014. Give me 15 minutes. She called back in 12. Entry dated August 16th, 2 p.m., she read. Signatory, Monica Calloway. Document type, custody surrender, voluntary. Witness, Gloria Henderson. Notes, signatory calm throughout. Read document before signing. Asked no questions, no signs of duress or hesitation. Signed without coercion. Denise took the phone. Mrs. Polk, I'm going to need you to testify to those notes in court. Young lady, Ernestine said, I've been waiting 12 years for someone to ask. Tyler appeared in the kitchen doorway at 11:30. He held a leather folder I recognized. The trust documents his paternal grandfather had sent 3 months ago. You need to see this, he said. He set the folder on the table, opening to a page marked with a yellow tab. Denise leaned in to read the highlighted paragraph. Trust amendment dated April 2015, she said. Explicit exclusion clause. Let me read this aloud. She picked up the document. Quote, the biological mother, Monica Calloway, is hereby permanently excluded from serving as conservator, guardian, or trustee of any assets held for the benefit of the minor beneficiary. This exclusion is based on documented evidence of child abandonment provided by Vernon Calloway and witnessed by Gloria Henderson. Unquote. Richard's father knew, Tyler said, before he died. Grandpa told him what happened, and he changed everything. He did, I said. Tyler looked at the table covered with documents, the photographs, the receipt, the letter. 12 years of my life organized into evidence. She left us, he said, and she came back for money. Jasmine appeared behind him, carrying a plastic bin I recognized from under her bed. 12 composition notebooks stacked inside, spines facing up, each one a different color. Every birthday, she said. Every Christmas. Every time Darnell got sick and Grandpa stayed up all night. I wrote it down. Denise opened the first notebook. 2nd grade handwriting. Crayon illustrations of Christmas trees and birthday cakes. Not one mention of your mother, she said, flipping through the pages. She wasn't there to mention, Jasmine said. The phone rang at 11:47. Denise answered before I could reach it. Detective Rawlings, she said. Thank you for returning my call. I listened to her half of the conversation. Questions about Monica's statements, property records, phone carrier data, school enrollment addresses going back 12 years. When she hung up, her expression had changed again. Detective Rawlings ran his own verification after the hearing, she said. Monica claimed you moved multiple times to avoid her. Property records show you've lived at this address since 1992. I told him I'd never moved. He believed Monica's story at first. He doesn't anymore. The kitchen clock showed 12:15 a.m. The table held 12 years of documentation, 3 Polaroid photographs, 12 composition notebooks, and trust fund papers with an explicit exclusion clause. Denise had filled 7 pages of her legal pad with notes. One more thing, she said. She pulled a document from her briefcase. This came through this afternoon. Subpoena. Response from Reese Development, LLC. She spread the financial records across the only remaining space on the table. Balance sheets, loan documents, skills, credit applications. Bradley Reese's company owes $4.7 million in construction loans, she said. 3 projects stalled. 2 properties that won't sell. Personal guarantees totaling $2.1 million against the Buckhead house and his retirement accounts. At current burn rate, he files bankruptcy within 90 days, and Tyler's trust fund is worth $340,000, I said. Denise nodded. She tapped the exclusion clause in the trust documents. This says Monica can never access those funds as conservator. But if she gains custody of Tyler, Bradley petitions as step-parent, the court appoints him instead. It was never about the children, Tyler said. His voice was flat, controlled. The voice of a 17-year-old who just learned he was an asset on a balance sheet. No, Denise said. It was always about the money. I looked at my kitchen table. Every surface covered with evidence. 3 Polaroids, 12 notebooks, a Waffle House receipt worth $7.43, a notarized letter that would destroy everything my daughter had tried to build. In 3 days, Judge Womack would read the custody surrender letter aloud in court. She would see the photographs of children abandoned in the night. She would hear testimony from Gloria Henderson and Ernestine Polk. She would examine financial records proving motive. And Monica would watch it happen. I gathered the photographs back into their plastic sleeves. The smell of old paper lingered on my fingers. The receipt back into its acid-free envelope. The letter back into its protective case. 12 years ago, I'd sealed these documents in a fireproof lockbox and prayed I'd never need them. Now they would end this. The evidentiary hearing convened at 9 a.m. on a Friday morning, 1 week after Monica had wept convincingly in this same courtroom. I wore my best button-down shirt, sleeves rolled to my forearms, and sat beside Denise Okonkwo at the defendant's table with my hands folded on the scarred wooden surface. The gallery was fuller than before. Word had spread through Atlanta's legal community. I counted 14 attorneys I didn't recognize, 3 court watchers who showed up to significant family cases, and the same reporter from the Atlanta Journal-Constitution who'd covered the emergency hearing. She sat in the 3rd row with her notepad already open. Monica and Bradley entered at 8005-2. She wore the same conservative navy dress, the same subtle jewelry, the same practiced expression of wounded motherhood. Bradley followed 3 steps behind, in a suit that cost more than my monthly pension. His fingers drummed against his thigh before they'd even reached their table. They settled into their seats. Monica adjusted her hair. Bradley whispered something to Patterson, their attorney, who nodded without looking up from his notes. The gold foil on Patterson's letterhead caught the fluorescent light. Judge Patricia Womack entered at exactly 9 a.m. The bailiff called the room to order. Womack removed her reading glasses, set them on the bench, and surveyed both tables with an expression I couldn't read. We'll proceed with the evidentiary hearing in the matter of Calloway versus Calloway, she said. Ms. Okonkwo, you may call your first witness. Denise rose from her chair. The respondent calls Gloria Henderson. Gloria walked to the witness stand with the measured pace of a woman who'd spent decades as a nurse and understood the value of precision. She wore a dark blue dress and low heels, her gray hair pulled back in a simple style. The court clerk swore her in. Mrs. Henderson, Denise began, how long have you lived at your current address? 35 years, since 1989. And in that time, have you come to know Vernon Calloway? I have. He's my neighbor. Persist. Lives directly across the street. Denise moved to the center of the courtroom. Were you home on the night of August 14th, 2014? I was. Can you describe what you witnessed that evening? Gloria's hands rested in her lap. I was in my kitchen making tea around 11:45 p.m. The motion sensor light on Vernon's porch came on. I looked out my window and saw a silver Honda Civic in his driveway, headlights still on, engine running. What happened next? A woman got out of the driver's side. She opened the back door and started pulling children out. 3 of them. The oldest was maybe 5. The youngest was still in a car seat. She carried them to Vernon's porch and left them there with some garbage bags. Garbage bags? Their clothes were in garbage bags, not suitcases. Garbage bags. What did the woman do after leaving the children on the porch? She got back in her car and drove away. Didn't look back once. Patterson rose. Objection. Foundation. How can the witness identify the woman she allegedly saw 12 years ago? Judge Womack looked at Gloria. Can you identify the woman, Mrs. Henderson? I can. Gloria's eyes moved to Monica. I watched that girl grow up across the street from me. I knew Monica Calloway from the time she was 8 years old. I know what she looks like. Overruled, Womack said. Continue, Mrs. Okonkwo. Denise walked to the evidence table and retrieved a manila folder. Mrs. Henderson, did you document what you witnessed that night? I did. I took photographs. The courtroom stirred. Patterson leaned forward. Bradley's hand crept toward his watch. Denise opened the folder and removed 3 Polaroid photographs in protective sleeves. She handed them to the court clerk. I'd like to mark these as Exhibit A. Judge Womack examined each photograph carefully. The first showed Monica's Civic in my driveway, headlights blazing against the dark. The second captured Tyler, Jasmine, and Darnell huddled on my porch steps, garbage bags slumped against the railing. The third showed taillights disappearing down Maple Street. Objection, Patterson said. We question the authenticity and chain of custody of these photographs. Mrs. Henderson, Judge Womack said, can you establish when these photographs were taken? Gloria nodded. Each Polaroid has the date written on the white border. My handwriting, August 14, 2014. I also made color copies at Kinko's in 2015 and stored them in my safe deposit box at Wells Fargo. Why did you do that? Because I knew. Gloria's voice reached the back row. I watched Monica grow up. I saw how she looked at those babies, like they were mistakes she couldn't return. When she drove away that night, I knew she wasn't coming back. So I kept my own insurance. The objection is overruled, Judge Womack said. Exhibit A is admitted. Monica's fingers tightened around the tissue in her hand. The mascara had begun to run, but the tears looked different now. Less controlled. Denise called her second witness. Ernestine Polk walked to the stand with the slow dignity of an 80-year-old woman who had spent 40 years making documents official. Her gray hair was styled simply, and she wore a cream-colored blouse. Mrs. Polk, Denise said, what was your profession before retirement? Notary public. Licensed in the state of Georgia for 40 years. Were you present on August the 16th, 2014 at the home of Vernon Calloway? I was. Mr. Calloway asked me to notarize a document. What kind of document? The custody surrender letter. Voluntary. Who signed that document? Monica Calloway. Can you describe her demeanor when she signed? Ernestine's eyes moved to Monica. Calm. She read the document before signing. Asked no questions, showed no hesitation, signed without coercion. She's lying, Monica said, loud enough for the gallery to hear. Judge Womack's gaze snapped to Monica. Mrs. Reese, you will remain silent until called upon to testify. One more outburst, and I will hold you in contempt. Monica's attorney put a hand on her arm. She sat back, but her jaw was tight. Mrs. Polk, Denise continued, did you keep records of this notarization? I did. Ernestine pulled a small leather book from her purse. This is my notary log from 2014, entry dated August 16, 2 p.m. She opened to a marked page. Signatory, Monica Calloway. Document type, custody surrender, voluntary. Witness, Gloria Henderson. Notes, signatory calm throughout. Read document before signing. Asked no questions. No signs of duress or hesitation. The notary log was marked as Exhibit B. Bradley's hand had not left his Rolex for the past 15 minutes. I could see the tremor in his fingers from across the courtroom. Denise retrieved a plastic bin from beside the evidence table. Your Honor, I'd like to introduce Exhibit C12, composition notebooks maintained by Jasmine Calloway from 2012 to present. Judge Womack accepted the first notebook. She opened it to a random page and began reading aloud. December 25th, 2018. Christmas morning. Grandpa made cinnamon rolls from scratch. Tyler got a new basketball. Darnell got art supplies. I got a journal set with different colored covers. We watched movies all day and ate too much. Best Christmas ever. She turned to another page. March 14, 2020. Grandpa stayed up all night because Darnell had a fever. He made him soup and read him stories until the medicine worked. I heard him walking around at 3 a.m. checking on everyone. Monica's face had gone pale. The tissue in her hand was shredded. Judge Womack closed the notebook. Ms. Okonwo, have you reviewed all 12 notebooks? I have, Your Honor. They document 12 years of family life, birthdays, holidays, school events. Not one entry mentions the children's biological mother. Denise introduced Exhibit D next. Tyler's trust fund, documents from First National Bank of Atlanta. She pointed to the amendment dated April 2015. This clause explicitly excludes Monica Calloway from serving as conservator, guardian, or trustee of any assets held for the minor beneficiary, Denise read. The stated reason is documented evidence of child abandonment. Patterson objected. Relevance. Judge Womack looked at him. Mr. Patterson, are you genuinely asking me to find financial motive irrelevant in a custody dispute? She turned to Denise. Continue. Denise produced Exhibit E, phone carrier records spanning 18 years, and Exhibit F, property records confirming continuous residence at the same Decatur address since 1992. Both directly contradicted Monica's claims of changed phone numbers and multiple relocations. She then produced subpoenaed records from Reese Development, LLC. Bradley Reese's company owes $4.7 million in construction loans. He has personally guaranteed $2.1 million against his residence and retirement accounts. At current trajectory, he faces bankruptcy within 90 days. She set the documents on the evidence table. Tyler Calloway's trust fund is valued at $340,000. Under Georgia law, a custodial parent can petition to become conservator of a minor's assets. Bradley was sweating now. Dark patches had formed under his arms. His hand had frozen on his Rolex, mid-touch. Judge Womack leaned forward. Are you suggesting, Mrs. Okonkwo, that this custody petition was filed to access the trust fund? I'm suggesting the evidence speaks for itself, Your Honor. No one moved. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. 12 years came down to this. Denise walked to the evidence table one final time. She retrieved a document in a protective plastic sleeve, the paper inside preserved with the care I'd learned from 35 years of postal service. Your Honor, I'd like to introduce Exhibit G, a notarized custody surrender letter dated August 16, 2014. She handed the document to Judge Womack. The judge examined the notary seal, the signatures, the date. Then she began to read aloud. Take them. I never wanted them. Whatever papers you need me to sign, I'll sign. Just don't contact me again. The words hung in the air. Judge Womack looked at Monica. Your signature, Mrs. Reese? Monica's composure cracked. The Buckhead diction she'd spent years cultivating dissolved, and her working-class Atlanta accent bled through. That ain't, I didn't mean, he made me sign it. I was depressed. I didn't know what I was doing. Judge Womack held up the letter. This document is notarized, witnessed by Mrs. Henderson and authenticated by Mrs. Polk, whose contemporaneous notes describe you as calm, willing, and showing no signs of duress. He took advantage of me, Monica said. I was struggling with postpartum depression. Your youngest child was 6 months old when you abandoned him, Judge Womack said. Postpartum depression has a different timeline, Mrs. Reese, and it doesn't explain why you waited 12 years to reclaim children you described as never wanted. Your Honor, Patterson stood. We request an immediate recess to confer with our client. Judge Womack removed her reading glasses and set them on the bench with deliberate care. Denied. Monica looked at Bradley. His hand was frozen on his Rolex. His face had gone gray. I sat at the defendant's table with my hands still folded, watching the woman who had left garbage bags full of children on my porch 12 years ago. The same courtroom, the same gallery, but everything had changed. The letter lay on Judge Womack's bench. Monica's own words, her own signature, her own abandonment, documented and preserved and now read aloud for everyone to hear. Patterson gathered his papers with shaking hands. Monica gripped the edge of the table like it was the only thing keeping her upright. Bradley stared at the floor. The reporter in the third row wrote without looking up, her pen moving fast across the page. Judge Womack looked at me. Her expression had shifted from neutral arbiter to something colder, something that understood exactly what had happened in this courtroom. We will proceed, she said, with additional testimony from Detective Rawlings regarding his independent verification of the evidence presented today. Judge Womack looked down at the documents before her. She set her reading glasses on the bench with the precision of someone about to deliver judgment. The courtroom recognized the signal. Attorneys who'd practiced before her for years straightened in their seats. The court reporter's fingers hovered above her keys. Mrs. Reese, 2 words. Attorneys who'd spent decades in this courtroom straightened in their seats. You filed a sworn affidavit claiming Mr. Calloway kidnapped your children. Monica's attorney started to rise. Judge Womack silenced him with a look that could have frozen water. You testified under oath that you never surrendered custody, that you were denied access to your children for 12 years through systematic isolation and manipulation. She paused. Let the words settle over the courtroom like a closing statement. Yet I am holding a notarized document. She lifted the custody surrender letter, still in its protective sleeve. Witnessed by 2 individuals of impeccable reputation. Authenticated by a notary public with 40 years of experience. Bearing your signature and explicitly stating your intent to abandon these children permanently. Monica's mouth opened. Nothing came out. Take them. Judge Womack read from the letter, her voice carrying to the back row. I never wanted them. Whatever papers you need me to sign, I'll sign. Just don't contact me again. I watched my daughter from across the courtroom. The navy dress she'd worn to project maternal suffering now looked like what it was. A costume. Her hands gripped the edge of the table. The tissue she'd been clutching had disintegrated into shreds scattered across the wooden surface. Your Honor, Patterson managed. My client was suffering from postpartum depression when she signed that document. She was coerced by her father into relinquishing custody under duress. Judge Womack's expression didn't change. Mr. Patterson, your client's youngest child was 6 months old when she drove to her father's house at midnight, removed 3 children from her car like luggage, and left them on a porch with their belongings stuffed in garbage bags. She did not seek treatment for postpartum depression. She did not contact child services. She did not return for 12 years. She returned when she learned her son's trust fund had matured. The judge set the letter down. Mrs. Polk's contemporaneous notes describe your client as calm, willing, and showing no signs of duress. She read the document before signing. She asked no questions. She drove away without looking back. That's not what happened, Monica said. Her Buckhead accent had cracked completely now, the flat Atlanta vowels bleeding through. He made me sign it. He told me I wasn't fit to be a mother. Did he hold a gun to your head? No, but did he threaten you with violence? No. Did he tell you that you would face consequences if you refused to sign? Monica's voice climbed higher. You don't understand what it was like. I was overwhelmed. I didn't have support. Judge Womack leaned forward. Mrs. Reese, I have presided over family court for 30 years. I have seen parents struggle with depression, addiction, poverty, and circumstances that would break most people. Those parents fight for their children. They seek help. They show up. She picked up Bradley's financial records. What I have not seen is a parent abandon 3 children at midnight, vanish for 12 years, and reappear only when a trust fund worth $340,000 becomes accessible. Bradley's hand froze on his Rolex. The color drained from his face. Your husband's company owes $4.7 million in construction loans. He has personally guaranteed $2.1 million of that debt. At current trajectory, Reese Development LLC will file bankruptcy within 90 days. Your Honor, Bradley started. Be quiet, Mr. Reese. You are not a party to this custody petition, but you will be a party to the criminal investigation I am about to refer. Criminal investigation. The words hung in the fluorescent-lit air. I am citing Georgia Code, Section 16, W70. Judge Womack's voice dropped to a register I'd heard veteran attorneys describe as devastating. Perjury in the first degree. A felony punishable by 1 to 10 years in state prison. Mrs. Reese filed a sworn affidavit containing statements she knew to be false. She testified under oath to events that demonstrably did not occur. The courtroom stirred. The reporter in the third row typed without looking at her keyboard. I'm also citing Georgia Code, Section 16, D226, filing a false police report. Mrs. Reese accused Mr. Calloway of kidnapping in a formal complaint to the Atlanta Police Department. That complaint initiated an investigation, consumed police resources, and resulted in the arrest of an innocent man in front of his grandchildren. I looked at my wrists. 1 week ago, handcuffs had clicked closed around them while Tyler, Jasmine, and Darnell watched from the doorway. The phantom weight of metal lingered. The sound, the confusion on Darnell's face. "Detective Rawlings," Judge Womack said. "Please approach the witness stand." Rawlings walked past Monica without looking at her. He'd been the one to read me my rights. He'd been the one to lead me to his unmarked car while my grandchildren watched. Now, he took the stand with the measured step of a man who'd realized he'd been used. "Detective, have you had the opportunity to verify the evidence presented by the defense?" "I have, Your Honor. Please share your findings." Rawlings opened a folder. "Mr. Calloway has resided at the same address in Decatur since 1992. Property records confirm continuous ownership. He has maintained the same phone number for 18 years. Carrier records confirm no changes or disconnections during the period Mrs. Reese claims she was unable to reach him." He turned a page. "School enrollment records list Mr. Calloway as the primary guardian for all 3 children from 2014 to present. Medical records show Mr. Calloway as the sole emergency contact and decision-maker for all healthcare matters. Immunization logs, dental appointments, prescription records, all signed by Mr. Calloway." Rawlings looked up. His eyes moved to Monica. "Mrs. Reese's account does not match any verifiable fact in the record." He paused. "Every claim she made in her sworn statement is contradicted by documentary evidence." The disgust in his voice was audible. This was a detective who'd been used to file false charges, who'd put handcuffs on a grandfather in front of 3 children, who'd believed a story that fell apart the moment anyone bothered to check. Judge Womack nodded. "Thank you, Detective." Rawlings stepped down. He walked past the defendant's table without looking at me, but I caught something in his posture. An acknowledgement. A man who'd gotten it wrong and knew it. Based on the evidence presented, Judge Womack said, "I am rendering the following judgment." The courtroom went silent. Even the fluorescent lights seemed to stop buzzing. The petition for emergency custody, filed by Monica Calloway Reese, is dismissed with prejudice. This means, for the benefit of those unfamiliar with the term, that it cannot be refiled. The matter is closed permanently. Monica's breath caught. "I am awarding full legal guardianship of Tyler James Calloway, Jasmine Marie Calloway, and Darnell Vernon Calloway to Vernon Calloway." This formalizes what 12 years of dedicated care has already established. Full legal guardianship. The words landed in my chest. What Eleanor and I had done out of love was now recognized by the state of Georgia. What we'd sacrificed, what we'd built, what I'd maintained alone after she died. The law finally saw it. I am ordering Monica Calloway Reese and Bradley Reese to pay all attorney's fees incurred by Mr. Calloway in defending against this fraudulent petition. Miss Oconchuo, please submit a detailed accounting to the court within 14 days. Denise nodded beside me. Finally, Judge Womack set her reading glasses on the bench. "I am referring both Monica Calloway Reese and Bradley Reese for criminal prosecution. The evidence of perjury and filing a false police report is clear and convincing. I am also recommending that the district attorney examine Mr. Reese's financial records for evidence of additional crimes." Bradley moved. He didn't run. That would have been too obvious. He simply stood, turned toward the exit, and began walking with the measured pace of someone trying to look casual while fleeing a burning building. He made it 6 steps. 2 courthouse security officers stepped into his path. They'd been positioned by the door since the hearing began. I hadn't noticed them until now. Judge Womack had. "Mr. Reese," she said, "please return to your seat." Bradley stopped. His hand went to his Rolex. His fingers trembled. Bailiffs, 2 uniformed officers, approached Monica's table. She looked up at them with an expression I'd never seen on her face before. Fear, real fear, not the performed kind. Monica Calloway Reese, you are being detained pending criminal processing. Please stand and place your hands behind your back. You can't do this, Monica said. Her voice cracked. I'm the victim here. He stole my children. The bailiff was unmoved. Clam, please stand. She stood. The handcuffs clicked closed around her wrists. The same sound I'd heard 1 week ago. The same metal, the same finality, but on different hands. The gallery watched. The same people who'd looked at me with suspicion during the emergency hearing now watched my daughter being led away in restraints. The reporter's pen moved without pause. Patterson gathered his papers with trembling hands, already calculating how to distance himself from the case. Bradley was escorted back to the defendant's table by the security officers. He didn't resist. The fight had gone out of him. I watched his face as he passed me. Nothing registered. Just the blank expression of a man who'd gambled everything and lost. Court is adjourned, Judge Womack said. The gavel fell. Movement erupted in the courtroom. Attorneys gathered their files. Spectators stood and began filing toward the exit. The reporter was already on her phone, dictating notes. I remained seated. Denise put a hand on my arm. Mr. Calloway, Vernon, it's over. I nodded, but my eyes had found something else. The gallery doorway. Tyler stood there, Jasmine beside him, Darnell in front, his 12-year-old face turned toward the scene unfolding in the courtroom. Monica was being led toward a side exit by the bailiffs. Her heels clicked against the worn floor. Her shoulders were hunched forward, her hair falling into her face. The conservative navy dress looked like a costume now, something borrowed for a performance that had failed. Darnell watched her go. Tyler, he said. His voice was quiet. The courtroom had emptied enough for me to hear. Yeah? Who is that woman? Tyler looked at his brother, then at Monica's retreating form, then back at Darnell. Nobody who mattered, he said. The bailiffs led Monica through the side door. It closed behind her with a sound like a book being shut. I rose from the defendant's table. My knees ached from sitting so long. My back protested the movement. 12 years of raising 3 children alone had taken a toll the pension didn't cover. Denise was saying something about paperwork, about timelines, about the formal guardianship documents that would need to be filed. I heard the words without processing them. There would be time for paperwork later. Right now, my grandchildren were waiting. I walked toward the gallery doorway. Tyler met my eyes first. 17 years old, taller than me now, with his father's jaw and his grandfather's stillness. He nodded just once. Jasmine held one of her composition notebooks against her chest. She'd brought it to the hearing. Documentation. Even now, she'd learned that from me. Darnell looked up as I reached them. His eyes were dry. No tears for the woman being processed into the county system somewhere in this building. No grief for a mother he'd never known. Can we go home now? He asked. Yeah, I said. We can go home. The 4 of us walked out of the Fulton County Courthouse together. The October sun hit my face as we pushed through the glass doors. Cool air. Blue sky, the smell of the city in autumn. Behind us, the reporter was interviewing Patterson on the courthouse steps. Something about unprecedented reversals and prosecutorial referrals. I didn't know then what would follow. The story in the Atlanta Journal-Constitution within 48 hours. Bradley's creditors filing to seize the Buckhead house before the week was out. The Civil War memorabilia auctioned by a court-appointed receiver. Monica's 53 Hermes scarves sold to cover legal fees. Bradley's eventual guilty plea to wire fraud charges, triggered by the financial discovery from our hearing. I didn't know any of that yet, not standing on the courthouse steps with my grandchildren beside me. What I knew was simpler. The lockbox had served its purpose. 12 years of documentation, sealed and preserved, delivered when it mattered most, chain of custody maintained, evidence authenticated, truth told. Eleanor would have been proud. Tyler put his hand on Darnell's shoulder. Come on. Grandpa's probably going to make us celebrate with one of his jazz lectures. I have a 1959 pressing that would be appropriate for the occasion, I said. Jasmine smiled. She opened her notebook and made a quick entry. Something about today's date and the word over. We walked to the parking lot together. The same 4 people who'd walked into this building 1 week ago in handcuffs and confusion. The same family. Different circumstances. I unlocked the car. Darnell climbed into the back seat. Jasmine followed. Tyler took the front passenger seat and immediately started adjusting the radio. I sat behind the wheel and looked at the courthouse one last time. Monica was being photographed and fingerprinted in a processing room. Down the hall, Bradley was meeting with a criminal defense attorney who would tell him exactly how much trouble he was in. The reporter was already drafting the headline. I started the engine. The radio came on. Tyler had found the jazz station, Miles Davis, appropriate for the occasion. I pulled out of the parking lot and headed home. Loving this so far? Smash like and rate my story from 1 to 10 in the comments. Thank you for being here. 6 months later, April sunlight filled the kitchen as I stood at the stove making Sunday pancakes while Miles Davis played on the 1959 Columbia 6i pressing. The horn filled the room with that sound I'd spent decades learning to hear. A man who knew exactly who he was. Tyler sat at the table with the scholarship letter spread in front of him. Full ride to Georgia State, basketball and academics both. The scouts had been right about him. More important, he'd been right about himself. Jasmine walked in carrying a new composition notebook. The cover was green, and she'd written Chapter 2 on the spine in silver marker. 14 notebooks now. 12 years of documentation. The habit had served her well. Darnell was drawing at his usual spot by the window. His sketch pad showed the 4 of us at this same table, morning light cutting across the page. No mother figure in the picture. Never had been. Never needed to be. The doorbell rang at 9:15. Gloria Henderson stood on the porch in her Sunday dress, holding a jar of the peach preserves she made every August. She'd been joining us for breakfast since the trial ended. Some debts couldn't be repaid with words. I poured batter onto the griddle. 4 pancakes, same as every Sunday since the trial ended. The math worked now in ways it hadn't when Eleanor was alive and we were still waiting for Monica to come back. She wasn't coming back. Monica was doing 18 months on the perjury charges. Bradley got 3 years federal for wire fraud. The Buckhead house sold at auction in February. Tyler's trust fund sat untouched at First National Bank. The original $340,000 had grown with interest, waiting for his 21st birthday exactly as his grandfather Richard had intended. The lockbox remained in my basement on its steel shelf. I still checked the seal once a month. Habit, but the documents inside had served their purpose. Chain of custody maintained, evidence authenticated, truth told. Gloria took her usual seat next to Darnell and admired his drawing. Jasmine made a quick entry in her new notebook. Tyler watched me flip the pancakes, with the same attention he'd given to vinyl records and jump shots and everything else I'd tried to teach him over 12 years. I set the first plate in front of Gloria, looked around the table at my family, the people who showed up, the people who stayed. Darnell added another figure to his drawing. Gloria, at our table, part of the picture now. The record kept spinning. Miles Davis. 1959. A man who knew exactly who he was. I sat down with my family and ate breakfast.